Hello, welcome back. It's Monster Day. Today we build monsters, make a monster, and you're seeing a labyrinth because there's a Minotaur in there somewhere. Somewhere in there, there's a Minotaur. Yes, the Minotaur. I've always been a little confused as to why Wizards of the Coast has insisted that the Minotaur be a monster that is not a legendary monster. So I'm going to try to correct that problem today and do what I think needs to be done with it. But I'm going to ask you a few questions. I've got a few ideas. We'll come back to this anyway. I'm going to put up a poll. Feel free to take part in that poll. Fred Huber, you're already on the same track. You've included one idea that I had not thought of, but I was thinking that way myself. Grab some food, some drink, make sure you're comfortable, and let's see if we can't make the Minotaur for Dungeons & Dragons 5e better than it was before. I think we can. So now that you've got your food, your drink ready, and you're comfortable, shall we go into this? Hi, Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about tabletop role-playing games, specifically Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and we're going to look at the Minotaur, the mythical monster at the middle of a maze. And Dungeons & Dragons has certainly appropriated this concept and idea for their own Minotaurs. They've got a little bit of a different spin on it. And so I want to sort of look at the stat block for today for Dungeons & Dragons 5e and see if we can do anything to improve it. And I think there are a couple of things that can be done to improve that monster stat block. And so that's what we're going to do. I have a Google document already set up and ready to go. I'm going to let you guys answer the question in the poll, and then we'll look at where we need to go from here. I have done some of the maths in advance, so I had a bit of time to actually sort of crunch the numbers and figure out if there were big problems or small problems, things like that. And I think I've got a pretty good idea of what needs to be done for today. And I'm hoping that you will add in your 2 cents. Do not feel bad if I do not include all your ideas. This is not like writing an adventure. This is like me redesigning, and sometimes people will see holes in my thoughts in the way that I'm trying to design. Sometimes they won't, but I'm all for you creating and making your own monsters, making your own modifications. So that being said, I'm going to put in sort of like a question in the chat, and then I'm going to show you the document that I have. I'm going to work my way through it and explain my rationale for why I'm doing such stuff, and then hopefully in about an hour we'll have a new monster Minotaur. Okay, let's do that. So hashtag what changes to the Minotaur, let's try that, Minotaur for D&D 5e do you think need to be made? Okay, so I'm put that in there. Bigger, meaner, stronger, vicious. Yeah, well, because a lot of that sort of says that, right? I can see that the votes are already going with the Minotaur should be a solo monster in the poll. That's going to be interesting. So those of you who are willing, share your ideas in the chat. I will come back to them. Yeah, let's go through the document that I've got for today, and we'll work our way through this, and I'll come back to chat in a second. Okay, so here I am. This is, oops, I'll just go up. This is the Minotaur stat block. I've transferred over most of the information from the monster stat block into this document, and this is the document that I use because this is the document that will make it easier for Wally DM to navigate in the future. So this is why I'm using this layout and this format. It's not the layout and format of the original Dungeons & Dragons 5e Monster Manual. And I was a playtester for this book. So, and I have been, whether people realize it or not, been playtesting these monsters for about 12 years, before 2014. Since I was in part of the beta and the alpha. So let's actually do some design work. So this This monster is a challenge rating 3 monster. I don't want to change the challenge rating of the monster. I don't think that is the important thing to consider. I'm happy for it to stay challenge rating 3. Okay, so I don't want to change that. I just want to make sure that the maths for the monster are lining up with challenge rating 13. 3, not 13. 3, not 13. We've got to have some low-level monsters. You can have, let's get real, we've done it before. You could have a lower-level legendary monster that functions like a legendary monster, but it will only be challenge rating 3. Like, you could do that. Remember, the concept of the legendary monster is really it can hold its own on its own. It doesn't need anything else around to help it. It can cope. It's tough, okay? It can take the punches. So does this monster do this? So looking at this, it says that it's supposed to have a proficiency bonus of +2, which we do have. It says that it should have 13 as its armor class. And they have pushed the armor class. The original armor class for this monster is actually a 14. So it's 1 point higher. Now, I've said this before, if it's about 2 points higher, I would have an issue. If it's just 1 point higher, I don't think it's a problem. Most of the time, when you think about it and how this works, most players at level 3 will have a +5 to hit or a +6, depending on the, whether they're playing a caster or they're playing a martial class. If you're playing a martial class, it's possible to have a +6. You could even have a +7 at level 1 or level 3, just because of the archery fighting style. So it's possible to push that number up quite a bit more. So what does that mean? If we have, generally they're going to have a +5, possibly higher. That means you need to roll a 9. Okay, so 3, 9, is it 9? No, it's 11. I think it's 11. 3, 5, 5, 5. No. Take 5 off 14, comes to 9. That's right. So you've got a better than 50% chance of hitting the monster. And I've always said you want to be hitting, between 50 to 75% of the time, and missing about 25 to 50% of the time, somewhere in that range. Okay, so that's probably all right. Like the armor class, I wouldn't freak out. If we make the armor class to 13, which is what the Dungeon Master Guide quick build monster thing, which isn't completely accurate, by the way, okay, if we take that into consideration, it would be even easier. So I think we can actually leave it where it is. So let's forget about, okay, we should use a 13 because the Dungeon Master Guide says. In this case, I think it's probably a bad idea. So let's take that off the cards. I'm just going to move some books around. I've got a lot of books in front of me. I have perused Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 1st edition, 2nd edition. Did I do 2nd edition? Yes, 2nd edition. Not version 3, 4E and 5E, to look at how the monster, the Minotaur was actually built and how they were sort of framing it. And yeah, I've got a pretty good idea of what I'm supposed to be doing today. Next, I don't want to change the con bonus. I don't want to change any of the stats. The stats are fine. As far as I'm concerned, it kind of works with the monster and the way that it's sort of structured and the mythology behind it. So I'm all good with all of that stuff there. That doesn't need to change. Its speed being 40 feet, well, it moves fast, okay? It's like a bull with 2 legs. Its average hit points are 76, right? 76 would be the average. And if your characters are probably going to wind up being level 3 when they face it, I would say level 3 characters may get 1 and a bit rounds out of this before it's dead. Maybe 2, okay? Which means, and that's for a group that aren't really sort of honed into maximizing the kind of carnage they can cause. So that means that, probably about 1.5, maybe 1 rounds, maybe even 2 rounds if you're very, very lucky. And then it's gone. No more Minotaur. Hit points, 117. 117 is the maximum hit points for this monster. I would always use 117 myself. Why? Because my players are power gamers and they are very skilled and they've been playing the game a long time and they're all dungeon masters. So they can take it. So I would say a number between 117 and 76, depending on where you think you need to sit it for your group. So I'm going to leave it that way, okay? I've already done the calculation. For those of you who are wondering how that all works, it's pretty simple. Let's get my little calculator up here. So 9 times 10, 9 times 10, easy maths. Okay, we get 90, you add the 27, and you get 117. That's the maximum hit points. So I run all my monsters at max hit points just because of this very fact. Okay, now, it has no saving throws. The original monster had no saving throws whatsoever. So in other words, it did not really have a huge advantage. At level 3, that's probably not going to be a huge problem. But it's also, I mean, it's really weak charisma, intelligence, and dex. And I wouldn't worry so much about the intelligence or even the charisma, although there are a few spells out there that require charisma. It's got reasonable wisdom, it's got reasonable con, it's got reasonable strength. Dexterity is a problem in that most spells tend to be focused on dexterity. If it's not dexterity, it tends to be wisdom. And then the other saving throws come into play very rarely. You'll notice it has a skill, which is perception. And that perception is listed as a +7. Now, why is it a +7? Because you get a bonus of only +2 from your proficiency bonus. Then you add wisdom, that's 15. So it's obviously got expertise. So they've doubled the number here. I mean, I'm not terribly concerned about giving monsters expertise. I mean, you can. I would be fine with just trimming that down. But it's a perception check. When are you ever really going to use a perception check outside of at the beginning of a battle when you're just trying to determine if somebody is surprised or not? It's really the only time it's going to come into play. This monster has no damage immunities. I have tentatively put in here bludgeoning, piercing, slashing from non-magical attacks. If you know anything about the mythology of the Minotaur from Greek mythology, you'll know that its skin was so tough that the only thing that could really pierce it was its own horn. You had to use its horn to stab through its skin. So you had to rip the horn off and tear through. Now, that being said, the horn was essentially a magic weapon. That's right. Magic weapon. So magic weapons should be able to go through the skin. And why not just have it be resistance? Because literally nothing used to be able to go through unless you did that. Now, there's nothing in the mythology that suggests that the Minotaur is, completely immune to fire or other type of lightning damage and things like that. But things like, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, which is usually what the mortals would use, it could deal with. I've put down the condition immunity because it has no conditions. Tentatively is frightened. Why do I want it to be immune to that condition? Because if you look at how the lore of the monster goes, the mythology, and you also look at how the monster was described in various monster manuals for D&D, it doesn't get scared. Okay, it's actually quite a frightening creature. It doesn't really get frightened. So let's eliminate that. Okay, let's eliminate it getting frightened. It's not really going to get frightened of anything. Okay, so we're going to eliminate that one first. Now you're thinking, it's only challenge rating 3. It's only challenge rating 3. Yeah, but it ain't, it's wise, but it ain't that smart, that intelligent. And it's, remember, it's got immunity to a whole bunch of bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage if we decide to put that in. If it doesn't, then maybe it doesn't. It has dark vision, 60 feet. I don't think that makes sense. Now, if you have a look at the Minotaur, you'll know that like a cow or a bull, they use their eyes and their sense of smell and their ears. But their sense of smell is very, very strong. It's very effective. It's very accurate. They can find a lot of stuff. And the lore in D&D for the Minotaur is also indicating that they have a very good sense of smell. I would suggest that dark vision is the wrong choice here. That blind sight, because it's not just their eyes that do well in the dark, it's their sense of smell and being able to pinpoint something in the smells that are around them. So I'm going to suggest taking that dark vision out and putting in blind sight, 60 feet. Blind sight. Okay, I think that's a much better use of our time. Passive perception, well, the perception is 7, you add 10, you get a 17. It's got Abyssal as its language, which I'm not sold on it completely or even against it that much. It's all right. The Minotaur is supposed to have its own language, and I guess because they break up languages into categories, that's what we do here. It would be nice if you could talk to the Minotaur, because who is ever going to speak Abyssal? Probably nobody. So we're going to add in common as well. And common. Okay. That's just so that every Minotaur you face with your player characters is not going to be another combat. All right, so we've got a few things down here. I'm going to leave these tentatively here for now. And then we've got a few different features here that we need to go through. So here is our charge. If the Minotaur moves at least 10 feet straight towards a target and then hits it with a gore attack on the same turn, the target takes an extra 9 hit points on average, okay? 2d8. If the target is a creature, it must succeed on a DC 14 strength saving throw or be pushed up to 10 feet away and knocked prone. So I had to think really hard about this feature. Like, are we adding too much to it? You're really only ever going to get to use your charge once, because once you've charged, you're kind of in the fray of battle. After that, you're kind of locked up. So it's really only going to ever get used once. And I was very tempted to take the charge and build it straight into the gore, so it was just part of gore. What I realized is that that's not what we need to do. We probably do need to keep it separated. As for the DCs and the amount of damage, I'm still unsure if those values are a good idea. So I'm going to think a little bit more about them. Anyway, coming back to this. Labyrinth Recall. The Minotaur can perfectly recall any path it has traveled. This feature, you'll notice, has no mechanics tied to it whatsoever. And it says perfect recall, any path it has traveled. So it can remember anything. This is why the Labyrinth Recall is such a strong feature. So I was thinking about this and trying to decide if we need to tie some sort of benefit. And then I realized that actually eliminates the whole concept of perfect recall. We don't want to do that. I was trying to decide, does that mean that I need to stipulate that you do not need to make a dice roll to recall the path you have traveled? And then I decided, no, let's just leave it as it is. I think it's actually pretty good the way it is. And if anybody sees any holes and problems, you'll let me know and I'll think about it again. But I think it's perfectly fine the way it is. The Minotaur is actually not as bad as it looks. It's just maybe the focus is not quite right. Reckless. At the start of its turn, the Minotaur can gain advantage on all melee weapon attack rolls it makes during that turn. But attack rolls against it have advantage attack rolls against it have advantage until the start of its next turn. So it's basically like the Barbarian's reckless attack. And of course, it just says at the start of your turn, da-da-da-da. So really, we're just saying you get advantage on your melee weapon attacks, whatever they might be, which is going to increase the chance of you hitting the target. So let's think about that. Remember, advantage is like having a +5, essentially. It's not as good as having just a +5, but it's kind of like that mathematically. So you've got pretty good chances, a Minotaur, of hitting your target more often than the players hitting, unless, of course, the players all have advantage as well, which could happen if you're dealing with a Barbarian. They could just reckless attack as well. So, yeah, so this changes the monster, making significantly more likely to hit their target more often. So a bit more dangerous. I'm not against the idea, okay, because the Barbarian exists, and there are plenty of ways that characters can get advantage on attack rolls. So, yeah, we'll leave that for now. I think that's fine. Next, actions. The Great Axe, melee weapon attack, +6 to hit, okay, and you're probably facing off against level 3 characters. It's got a reach of 5 feet, one target, and it does this much damage. This much damage is probably not going to be enough. I think you'll find that 17 is nowhere near. Even the gore doing 13, even if you add 13 to the 9, if you're charging, what does that really mean? That just means that you're doing, what, 22 points of damage? 22 points of damage if you hit with the gore, which you've got a pretty good chance because you've got to have potentially advantage on it. That's a good thing. And I'm not going to show you that yet because I'm going to go and see what the chat is saying in a second. So there are a couple of things here I want to put in. The condition immunity, the damage immunities, I think that's much more in line with the Minotaur. And then I also want to look at the numbers for the Great Axe. Okay, so let's go to chat for a second, and then I'll come back and I'm going to start changing some of the numbers around the Great Axe, the gore, and a couple other things, probably the charge as well. Okay, so we'll deal with that in a second. And let's go to chat. All right, so I'm just switching over so I can see. So I'm not having to change my eyes back and forth all the time. And a drink of tea. I am drinking green tea. It's helping me a lot. Charge attack. If it can charge 20 feet before hitting the first target, it can charge through in a line 40 more feet, attacking all in a line with its horns at advantage. CR13 is actually low versus the legendary creature. No, not really. I think we can make a level a challenge rating 3 legendary creature. I think that's perfectly fine. Charge doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity. No, I think I want them to be able to have provoke attacks of opportunity. In my case, it won't matter because I don't even use them. So, I mean, if you're using, opportunity attacks, great. Let them attack it. It's just going to reduce the length of the battle. I don't think that's a big problem. But I do like the idea of your blind sight, and I actually did take a note of the frightening roar, because I think the idea of having something that's like frightening presence, as you mentioned, Fred Huber. Fred Huber is a patron, and so is Wizards and Warp Drives. Oh, nice. I am currently reading the Dragonlance novel, Kratz the Minotaur. I love the Dragonlance Minotaur mythology. Yes, I'm aware of this, Nacho. In the Dragonlance, the Minotaur believes their destiny is to conquer and enslave the world. Wow. Okay, so I'm just interested. How are we doing? Undecided, but 70% out of 10 votes think that the Minotaur is a solo monster, which means it really probably should be like a legendary monster. Okay, let's have a look and see what I've been up to, since I have done a bit of prep, as I said before, and we'll show you what we have here. I am of the same opinion. One of the things I noticed before they released the monster manual when I was playtesting is that there were a lot of monsters that were not listed as being legendary monsters, and yet they probably should have been. And the Minotaur was one of those. So was the Medusa, actually. I'd never understood why that was not listed as it's a legendary monster. Okay, so if I look at this Dungeon Master Guide, challenge rating 3, armor class we've discussed. Its hit points are actually in the right bracket. Would you believe it? They actually hit the right on the money. It's pretty close. Like the table says 101 to 115, and our maximum hit points is 117. So that's pretty close. I don't think that needs any real adjustment. So they actually did a great job there. Next, its attack bonus. They say its attack bonus should be a +4, which is bollocks because every level 1 character is going to have at least a +5 at level 3 or even at level 1. So the monster has a +6. Why is that? Because two for the modifier, and then they get the strength modifier, which is 4, and so you get a 6. So if you think about how your character is going to build, they're going to have a modifier of probably about +3 at level 3, and they will also have a +2 proficiency bonus, which means they get a +5. We're only 1 point above what the characters are likely to have, being a +6. So I'm not going to screw with that. I'm going to leave it alone. Would you believe it? Even though I highlighted it, I actually think it's fine. Let's just leave it where it is. It's close enough. Okay. The table here for the Dungeon Master Guide on page 274 for a challenge rating 3 monster should read more like a +5 in my opinion. If you make it much harder for the monsters to hit the player characters and the characters have got a better chance of hitting the monsters, the only thing is you get a one-way fight. That's all I've ever found has been the case. It's just always a one-way fight. So why would we do that? That would be silly. So we're not going to do that. So this is fine. We'll leave that. Did a good job. Next, bring up our calculator. It also says how much damage we do. It says that for a challenge rating 3 monster, and this is if it was just fighting amongst, with other monsters, and it wasn't a legendary creature, should be doing about 21 to 26 points of damage per round. And we don't have multi-attack. We just get one attack. Okay, but we get advantage, so that's kind of like having 2 attacks. Not really. But I don't want to diminish the amount of damage it does here to try to give it 2 attacks. I'm not going to do that. Instead, we're going to just pump up this, because if you look at this, average is too low. If we put in a 3 here and go 3d12, we're probably going to be just in line. So the average of 12 is 6.5. And if we've got 3 dice, multiply that by 3. Okay, so we've got that. Oh, let's just move this down a little bit more. And if we've got that, then we're going to add on our 4 plus 4. So 23 points of damage. Okay, that's not bad. So 23 points of damage with its great axe. Let's put down 23. Whoopsies. Try that again. 23. So 23 points of damage. Well, that's much closer to where we needed to be for a monster like this per round. So that's good. We can say that is I'll lock that in. That is a change that we want to keep. The next one is the gore. Now the gore is really kind of pointless if you've got a great axe. Would you be goring your target if you've got a gore attack? And it leads into the charge. So what I want to do is I actually want to make the gore more in line with the great axe, but not quite as good. It'll be just slightly less. But if you charge on the first round, you're going to do a bucket load more because of this charge feature. And that will push it above what you should be doing per round. But it's only going to happen once. And I was thinking about this before, about whether that would be too much for a level 1 character. If they were to take significantly more damage than just the 13 plus 9. So think about it, 13 plus 9. So 13 plus the 9, if we're charging, gives us 22, which is less than the great axe. Why would you use the gore? You wouldn't bother. So there's no point having it structured that way. This is one of the things that I found when I was playing the game is, oh, fine, I get to charge and I get to use my gore, but the gore does so little damage that when I add the 9 to the 13, it's less than the average for the great axe. Like, this is what things like you got to think about, right? As a power gamer, if you've got power gamers, they're thinking like this. If you're a dungeon master, you're thinking this way. So I never really used the gore because it was the worst option. That sucks. So let's make it slightly better. If I make it 3d8, so 3d8, and I was charging, so 4.5 is the average of 8. Multiply this time by 3 rather than 2, gives me 13. Then I add on the 4 for the modifier. That gets me 17. Then I add on, if I'm charging, 9. Well, that's 26. That's only about 3 points more. Am I really that excited about just doing 3 points more damage? Should it be a bit more scary, since you're probably only ever going to be able to do it once? I know Fred Huber's saying that you could charge through more than one target and hit more than one target with your gore, but that, the intention behind gore is not to have it hit multiple targets. It's to hit one target. I don't want them charging through a line of characters in a 5 foot wide passageway and knocking every single one of them down prone and back 5 feet and doing a bucket load of damage. Like, that's too much. Okay, But we still want to hit one of those targets hard enough that it's worthwhile doing it, right? At level 3, is that going to be a fatal blow? Probably not, but whoever gets hit is going to get hurt a lot. So I'm going with 3d8, or we go up a little bit more. How much more compared to our Great Axe attack? That's sitting pretty much where it needs to be. If I went to 4. 4 might be a better option. Does this feel like an option that would actually work well for me? So let's go with 4.5 and then multiply it by 4. Okay, cool. And so that's 18. And then we add the 4 plus 4 for the modifier. Gives me 22. So the Gore still does less damage than the Great Axe, so the best weapon to use generally will be the Great Axe. But if I am able to charge, which I'm only going to get to do once, I get to add that 9. So I now do 31 points of damage on one blow, probably in the first round. You're only going to get to use it probably in the first round. Okay? That actually is probably a better option. I think that works. That means if you decide that you don't want to do slashing damage, you want to do piercing damage, the difference is going to be minuscule. So minus 9 gives me back to 22. So the difference between the two attacks is not huge, but I do have a huge benefit if I can charge with my Gore. I think that's where we sit. I may have over-talked this a little bit, but knowing my players and my group, I think it'll work perfectly fine. I've never found a Minotaur battle, a single Minotaur battle with the player characters, and they almost always get presented on their own as just one Minotaur. It usually gets crushed like a bug. And I have modified the snot out of these things so many different times. So I don't think it's going to matter. I think we're going to be all good. We want the charge. Do I want the DC 14 strength saving throw? Now I was trying to think about this because we don't want to include too many dice rolls for a dungeon master. If we're charging, we have to hit. We have to move at least 10 feet. We don't have to make an extra dice roll to get the extra damage. As long as we hit, we get the extra damage. Okay? So let's leave that there. If there's any change that needs to be done to the charge and the Gore, it won't be to the charge damage. It'll be to the Gore damage. You just bring it down to 3d8 if you find that 22 on average is too much. I think that's going to be fine. If the target is a creature, it must succeed on a DC 14. Now, what's the DC kind of expected for a challenge rating 3 monster? They say it should be a 13. Okay, I would agree. Player characters at level 3 probably will have a 5. So that's 5 for their modifier. Oh, not 5? No, they have a 3. They should have a 3. Yeah, not a 5, a 3. So they have a 3. Plus 3, probably a 16 for their ability score. So 3, then you get your proficiency bonus, which is a plus 2, which comes to 5, and then you add 8, so that's 13. This one is 14, so it's 1 point higher. So it's a little bit higher. Every time you move those numbers by just 1, I wouldn't worry about it. Whether it's up or down, it doesn't really matter as far as I'm concerned. So we're going to just say that's fine. We'll leave that as it is. It could be a 13, but I think 14 is still going to be reasonably safe. So we don't have to change too much. Okay. All right. So we've fixed the problem between Gore and the Great Axe. Now we're looking at legendary actions. And you'll notice that I am porting over an approach that I've used with all of the legendary monsters that I've built on this channel. And that is, we do not have 3 legendary actions. We have a legendary action at the end of every player's turn. So before I start working on this bit, which I will, I want to go to chat and just see if they've said anything else that I need to take into consideration. And there. Okay. All right. Okay, tradition. Back when the creature were first added to the game, there wasn't really a legendary creature category. No, there wasn't. That's very, very true. So I'm putting a marker in here. Based on our poll, out of 11 votes, yes, people think that the Minotaur is a solo monster. I believe it is too. Okay, it was a rhetorical question as far as I was concerned. I'm leading you towards a direction that I knew it needed to go. So we're going to make it a solo monster, which means we make it a legendary monster. It's a legendary monster. It fights on its own. It needs to be able to have legendary actions. Does it need a lair action? I'm going to leave that to you, okay? As the Dungeon Master, you decide what you think their maze, which is probably going to be their maze as their lair, but it might not be a lair. It might be just a catacomb of tunnels. You know, it could be anything that's kind of labyrinth-like. So I'm going to leave that to you guys to figure out. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, and we're going to build out the legendary actions, which I had always planned to do anyway. Ah, dear. Okay, here we go. So, legendary actions. The Minotaur can take one legendary action at the end of each player's turn. Why? Because it can be adjusted for the size of the player's group. If you have 3 players, they'll get 3 legendary actions at the end of every player's turn. If it is a group of 5, then there would be 5 legendary actions that you can take. If you have a group that's 10, then you can adjust it for 10 characters. It's going to do a lot more. Okay, so standard actions that you can use. Things like dash, dodge, grapple, help, search, shove, and use an object. I know these have changed in D&D for Dungeons and Dragons 2024, but I'm not really playing that game, and I think a lot of people won't be for a while, unless of course you like the idea of having a book full of errors. We'll be talking about that book tomorrow. Anyway, basic attack. The Minotaur makes one attack with its great axe or gore. Now I like this idea too, but I also want to include what Fred Huber had suggested, and that is the frightening roar. Now I was thinking, do I include this in the actions here, or do I want it to be a legendary action? And I decided no, I want it to be part of the legendary action that you take. So that is what we're going to do. So I'm going to turn this into Arial. I'm going to make this go up a 1. And we're going to port over a few mechanics from a dragon and change it so that it's not based on sight, because right now it's based on what you see. For those of you who are looking at this and thinking, excuse me, Fred, no, there's something wrong here. No, I don't think there is. I think we'll be good. I'm going to come back to this actually. I haven't even decided if we need to include some saving throws. I do want there to be some weaknesses to this thing. I'm just trying to decide whether I need to bring up its dexterity, intelligence, and charisma saving throws so that they aren't quite so pathetic, because right now they're really bad. Yeah. I'll just do it right now, and then I'll bring over the mechanics for the dragon frightening presence. Yeah, so let's go Dex. So proficiency bonus plus the 0 is going to be a plus 2. That's not going to be a huge benefit, but at least better than a 0. Intelligence will wind up being just a straight out 0. And at least it's not a minus. Minuses are bad for monsters. And then the charisma. Okay, and it's a -1, so +2 for the bonus, so that's a +1. So even though it's got these saving throws, they're not huge. We're not going to give, no, actually, this begs the question, do we need to include legendary resistance? And I do use legendary resistance in legendary monsters. Probably should bring that across. Let's do that. So I'm going to include those. Condition immunities, we'll come back to that. Legendary resistance, charge feature. Okay, so can I just find what I'm looking for quickly from a legendary monster? We have now established that it is. So the Mummy Lord is a legendary monster as far as I'm concerned, and I'm using this mechanic, not the older legendary resistance mechanic that you're familiar with. I'm using a completely different one, and that will give it a slight benefit. You won't be able to use it all the time. That's quite deliberate. Okay. So legendary resistance once per round, not once per turn, but once per round. If the Minotaur fails a saving throw, it can choose to succeed instead. So that will get us past some of the saving throw problems that we come across. Okay, so there's a little bit going on there. That's fine. Okay, going down, 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 down. We needed the frightening presence. I think I can get rid of this. I do not want to give it magic resistance. I was looking at older versions of the Minotaur, and one of the things I did notice is it did not seem to appear to have any specialized magic resistance. If anybody disagrees with that, you'll let me know, but I think that's probably the right way to go. So let's go here. Let's find a dragon. And I'll just do a cut and paste job of the dragon and then rearrange it for the Minotaur. So dragon. And going down, 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 we want a dragon. Crystal dragon, copper dragon, brass dragon, whatever, doesn't matter. Okay, so frightful presence, which is a horribly complicated mechanic, but yeah, we will include it in the legendary actions rather than the other ones. You're going to get plenty of them, so let's get rid of this. And then frightful roar. Okay, each creature of the... Now, I think we get rid of the choice thing. I think the choice, each creature within... Now, I'm 120 feet. Is that too much? Do I want to... No, because sound travels, and it's a roar, it's a sound. It's not their actual, the sight of them that we're dealing with. So each creature within 120 feet of the Minotaur. Not aware. So each creature within 120 feet, let's just move this up so it's a bit more central. The Minotaur, each creature within 120 feet of the Minotaur that can hear it roar. It's the roar that we're wanting, it's the sound, roar, must succeed. Must succeed on a DC. Now this is a 16, so I don't want to wisdom. Wisdom saving throw is fine, but we need to trim this down. It needs to be a 13 or a 14, and I think we're going to make it a 14. Make it 14 wisdom saving throw, or become frightened for 1 minute. That can hear. That can hear, not near, hear. H. Hear it roar, must succeed. Okay. Creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turn, ending the effect on itself on a success. If the creature's saving throw is successful or the effect ends for it, the creature is immune to the Minotaur's frightening roar. For the next 24 hours. So there we go. There's our mechanic for frightening roar. So it's got a little bit more going on. We've got the frightening bellow or roar from it, and then we've also got the gore and the charge, and most of it is done. Like, there isn't really, if you ask me, there's not a lot left to be done with this. We could say that that's probably close enough to what we need, and it's super simple. As a legendary monster, one of the simplest legendary monsters you could have, gives you lots of options with your legendary action, gives you you obviously want to use the frightening roar first. They don't have to see you, all they have to do is be able to hear you, so that 120 feet is going to be quite useful to you as long as the sound can reach them. All good. So we just need to look at the condition immunities. One of the problems I've found with solo monsters, and this was the case for, it's been the case for Dungeons & Dragons 5e and for Dungeons & Dragons 4e, and any time you have a solo monster, they always suffer problems. And because the game has more conditions than it ever had before, conditions can really just shut down a monster completely. And we don't want to do that. How many, just have a look here. Occasionally, monsters should do too much. Yeah, monsters should be. Yeah. Legendary action move. Oh, you want. Well, dash is a move. Dash is a move. You want to just. You want me to add in the word move rather than dash. I'm pretty sure I included as part of your legendary actions you can dash. Dash essentially means you get to move. Okay. Dash doesn't mean you get to move double your distance and your speed. It's just you get to move again. So dash is the same thing. So I don't think we need to necessarily add that. But Derp is a patron. Thank you for putting in your 2 cents. I think I covered it. If you think that I haven't, you let me know. But I'm pretty sure that dash covers the move. You can move. Okay. Okay, next. I kind of want it to lead off with the roar from around the corner as it approaches the PCs. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. Like, you could use these features outside of battle. The idea being is that inside battle, you have them designated as an action, a free action, a bonus action. You're not going to see a bonus action from me, or a reaction. You're not going to see really a true reaction from me either. I am fine with free actions and actions. I am not a fan of the other things, and I don't really consider legendary actions a reaction as such. So, yeah. Old Jason the Argonauts movie. Yes, I love that movie, by the way. It roars and scares most of the prisoners waiting to be eaten. Yes, absolutely. But there's nothing stopping you from using the frightening roar before the battle starts. Okay, before you roll initiative and you have to go and lock yourself into, it's time for action, reactions, bonus actions, movements, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Then it eats the first runner. Okay, all right. So, yeah. Let's go in and have a look at the, pardon me. Let's go have a look at the saving throws. Not saving throws, the conditions. There are a bunch of conditions that cause problems for legendary monsters. And I would advise you to build your legendary monster, if it hasn't already been done, in such a way that it can contend with those sorts of things happening. Okay. So I'm grabbing the player's handbook. I'm going to look at the different conditions that are available, and we're going to decide which conditions probably need to be added. And I think there are a couple of them that should be added. 1, condition immunity, condition blind. I don't think that blind's going to matter if you have blind sight, because you've still got your sense of smell. So forget that. Charmed. No, I do want you to be able to charm the monster. I think charming a Minotaur should be something that you can probably do. It's not infallible to that sort of thing, so I think we'll leave charmed alone. Deafened. Can you deafen it? Would it really matter deafening it? I think you can probably deafen the creature. Okay? Frightening. No, we've taken that off the cards. Grapple. Yes, I think you could probably grapple a Minotaur. It's probably got a bit of an advantage on you, but we could include athletics as a skill and make it a little bit harder. So let's do that. But I'm not going to give it condition immunity to being grappled. Not at all. Athletics. And we won't give it expertise. We'll just go its strength modifier, which is 4, plus its proficiency bonus, which comes to a 6. And full stop. And there we go. So athletics. So we're leaving grapple alone. Incapacitated. No monster should be immune to being incapacitated. Whenever you're making your monsters. Invisibility. Well, that doesn't make any sense, so forget about that. Paralyzed. The problem with paralyzed is there's a bunch of things that would certainly be able to paralyze it. I think you should be able to petrify a Minotaur just like the Kraken, so leaving petrified alone. Paralyzed, I'm always a little bit concerned about paralyzed and stunned. I'm more concerned about stunned. Being poisoned, can you poison this thing? Yeah, I think you can probably poison it. Can you knock it prone? Yes, I think that seems reasonable too. Can you restrain it? Yeah, I think that's reasonable. But stunned and paralyzed would shut down the monster. Why would that be a problem? Here's the problem here. A paralyzed creature is incapacitated. See the condition. The creature automatically fails a strength and dexterity saving throws. So dexterity saving throws are the most common spell that you can use, right? Attack rolls against the creature have advantage. That won't matter because they already have advantage. You can already have advantage against this monster. It's going to go reckless for sure, right? Any attack that it hits the creature is a critical hit. So you do critical damage as well. Okay, right. But let's have a look at incapacitated. An incapacitated creature can't take actions or reactions. That essentially means that your legendary actions, your main action, you shut that down. There are so many things that can paralyze creatures. There are so many things that can paralyze a creature. It is very easy to get that. I don't like the idea of letting the entire legendary solo monster be shut down for an entire round while you wait for it to be able to function again. It's anticlimactic. It's not fun for players. It's not fun for a dungeon master. So I'm going to say we're going to put this one in here. This is a functional thing rather than necessarily a narrative rationale. It's how do we avoid making the monster completely useless. And by not having that be a factor, we solve a lot of problems. Next, petrified, already talked about. We should be able to do that. Poison, that's fine. Prone, that's fine. Restrain, that's fine. Okay, even if you're restrained, you can still do stuff while you're restrained. It might be a bit harder, but that doesn't matter. Unconscious, nothing should ever be immune to being unconscious. But stunned. I love the monk. Don't get me wrong. I love playing monks and wizards. And I love the stun feature for the monk. But let's get real. That shuts down a monster for an entire round, which is, of course, exactly what you want. And a monk can do this pretty quickly on. Like it's going to happen, more than likely. Like what level am I likely to be when I can use my monk to stun a Minotaur? Will I be level 1? Will I be level 2? Will I be level 3? Somewhere in there, something like that. This is one of the things I think we don't take into consideration is when you're building monsters, you have to build them and take the actual features of a class into consideration. Are any of the classes able to shut down a monster completely? Now you don't get Stunning Strike till level 5. So level 5, you get Stunning Strike. And you're probably going to be dealing with this at level 3. Okay, so it's not going to be on the cards. Are there ways of getting a stunning ability before that? It's not quite so easy to do. Would you throw a Minotaur at a group of level 5 characters though? I think that the issue is more about it shuts it down completely and it can't do anything. And that's the problem. Like a stunned creature is incapacitated again. It can't do anything. No actions, no reactions, and an action and a bonus action are essentially the thing. It won't matter whether you took an action or bonus action, reaction. It just can't do nothing. And can't move, so it can't move, but it can speak, only faintly. Whatever. Will that really matter? No. The creature automatically fails strength and dexterity saving throws. Again, it's just like paralyzed. And attack rolls against it have advantage. That doesn't matter because it's going to go reckless anyway. It's the fact that it can't do anything. So I'm adding stunned as well. I know a few people will be like, Fred, come on. Are you just going to make it so that no conditions can actually ever affect it? No, we haven't. We've added 3. If we do this, we've only added 3 conditions out of all of 15 conditions that exist. Stunned. And they're all designed to make sure that the monster is fun rather than a cakewalk. We're not looking for power gamers to have a cakewalk or our people who aren't power gamers. Look, everybody has to have fun at the table, not just the players. And anti-fun things are paralyzed and stunned, particularly if you're dealing with a solo monster. Now, if the Minotaur was part of a group, then that wouldn't matter. You could take away paralyzed and stunned because you've still got other monsters with it. And it doesn't really make a lot of sense to have minions with a Minotaur. I suppose you could, but what would they be? You know? Narratively, story-wise, how is that going to work? The only reason to include paralyzed and stunned as condition immunities is because it's acting on its own. It's a legendary monster. It's essentially a solo monster. So that is why I've put that in, okay? And it's purely mechanical to make sure the monster is fun and not a complete joke, because otherwise it will be. I'm just going to push this down. So let's go back to chat, and then I think we're ready to review this. Let's see what other people have said. Okay. Typo, its own. Then it eats. So if it gets deafened by its roar on a roar, it can't hear the spells that need to hear it. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, but the roar doesn't deafen you. It just frightens you, right? So I still think there should be something that can deafen the creature. Hello, Negative Space. How you doing? I still like my idea of certain creatures would have an ability that says if they were to get stunned, they are slowed for one turn instead. I suppose you can do that. One of the reasons why I don't do that sort of thing, if I can help it, when I'm looking at monsters, Negative Space, is like when I was playing Dungeons and Dragons 4E, there was this huge problem with condition immunities and having to track too many things. And like, you know, whether it was the players or the monsters, that you could wind up with a gazillion different conditions to track. Okay? You can make the roar deafen them as well. I don't think we need to worry about that. I think it's just a frightened thing. I think that's good enough. I think it's got the flavour. It's doing something. They might run away. That's kind of what we're after. Yeah. So yeah, I don't want to add too many different things. One of the things I think, if you're going to do anything with a monster and you're going to have something that it can do as a condition, have it do something that is easy to sort of deal with. Like tracking something that is prone is easy, because if you're using miniatures, you lay it down. If you're playing a theatre of the mind, you just have to remember it's prone. If you're pushed back, that changes position. Theatre of the mind, that's harder. Doesn't mean quite so much on a battlefield or grid, because I mean essentially you can move the miniature around, and you know you don't have to put a ring around it or a little marker to indicate a condition. It's just changing position on the battlefield. So that's all good. Those are fine. Frightened is something you have to track now. I don't want to add another thing to it, so you're tracking being frightened and deafened, and then including a saving throw for both. This falls into that trap, as I said, of Dungeons and Dragons 4E, and this is where unfortunately Dungeons and Dragons 2024 is going. Too many conditions going at once that you need to track, too many different things that players can do, and I don't know if the monsters will be doing that as well, but if the monsters are doing it as well, that will be a problem as well. So it doesn't mean you just have, you know, different conditions on the players and the monsters. Like, you know, if it's just one, it's one-sided. If it's both, it's worse, and you're going to sit there for hours trying to get through a battle. That's not fun. Monster battles and combat in D&D are fun when they are fast. If all you care about is combat, then, you know, a combat simulator is probably better done with a computer game. Analog games, in my opinion, work much better if they are fast. Okay, so let's have a look at the monster for its final sort of rendition. And I'll just mark my point here so I know where I'm up to in terms of the chat, what I've done. And we'll go through this, and I'll show you all the changes and explain everything that I've done today. And I think that's a reasonable job there. So let's do that. Okay. So remastering the Minotaur for Dungeons and Dragons 4E. Haha, 4E? 5E. So the Minotaur stat block remastered for Dungeons and Dragons 5E. So I haven't actually changed it that much. There are some changes here, some things I've added, but a lot of the things were actually all right. I've taken the viewpoint, and I think a lot of people do, that the Minotaur is not a monster that fights with other monsters. It tends to fight solo. It really is a solo monster. If that's the case, it's really a legendary monster. So let's design it for that. So its armor class is 14. It probably should be a 13, but 1 point up won't matter, so I left it at 14. It's fine. Its hit points, its maximum hit points is 117. Its average is 76. I didn't change that. That's actually fine too. Its speed being 40 feet, that's fine. Didn't change it. I didn't change any of the ability scores or the modifiers. I'm happy with the numbers where they are. I did kind of boost up the dexterity, the intelligence, and the charisma in terms of saving throws, and I've given them a +2 dex and a 0 modifier for intelligence, and charisma gets a +1. Okay, that's just so that you're not dealing with negative numbers and making it too easy for the players to use their characters to stomp on the Minotaur. I've given it athletics as a skill, so +6. It had perception at +7, that's no change. I've included damage immunity, not resistance, to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical attacks. That means they're going to have to use some sort of other way of damaging it. There are lots of different damage types out there. Okay, a magic weapon would get past this. Will the characters at level 3 facing this have a magic weapon? Maybe, maybe not, probably not. So that they're going to have to sort of hold the line while somebody else does a lot of the hurling of magic at it. So magic's probably going to make play a big part in this. So I've included that. Now, why have I done that? The mythology behind the Minotaur is that the horn is like a magic weapon, and it's one of the few things that can pierce its skin. But you can also pierce its skin with a magical weapon or a magical blade. So that's why I've included that, to follow that narrative. Condition immunities. I've put in frightened because if you look at how the lore for the Minotaur in mythology and in Dungeons and Dragons mythology or lore, they don't get frightened. It's very rare you would be able to frighten this creature. So I don't want them to be able to be frightened off. So I've put that in. The paralyzed and stunned is there to stop it being shut down for an entire round while the players wail on it, because even with the number of hit points that it has, between 76 and 117, it's only going to last about 1 or 2 rounds and it will be dead. Okay, it's a solo creature. It's going to have to deal with everything on its own. So I don't want them to be able to shut it down. Okay, that would be an unfun way. That's basically a Minotaur that does nothing. Okay, it had dark vision. I've given it blind sight to 60 feet. Why? Because it's not just its eyes that are really strong and can see in the dark. It has really good sense of smell, and it can use that to detect locations of creatures that it can pick up. Its passive perception is not changed. Its language was abyssal, but I've added common so you can actually talk to the thing. It's not always going to be a fight. Otherwise, most people will never have abyssal to communicate with. It is a legendary monster in my opinion, so I've given it legendary resistance once per round. Okay, you don't get 3 of them, you get once per round. And then the charge feature. The charge feature is actually pretty solid the way it is, so I left it as it was, but it doesn't play well with the gore, and I've had to fix the gore. The labyrinth recall is fine, I left that alone. The reckless is perfectly fine as well. It's like the barbarian's reckless. It's cool, we'll leave that. It's not an action, which is great. It's just something you can do at the start of your turn, which it's great the way that it's worded. Frankly, I think the barbarian should have it worded that way as well, but we'll see how that goes. The Great Axe, the attack bonus, I actually think that it probably should be more like a +5, but because players can get anywhere from a +6 to a +7 to attack, even at level 1, 2, or 3, round about that range, I'm fine with it being 1 point higher than the player characters. That's all right. The Great Axe didn't do very much damage, so I've boosted the damage up to 23 on average, so that's 3d12 plus 4. The gore, if you looked at the gore and the damage it was doing before, even if you did a charge, it was doing such a pathetic amount of damage compared to the Great Axe. The Great Axe was a better option. So we had to fix that problem, because you wouldn't bother doing it other than it being a good story narrative that it charges, uses the gore, and winds up doing less damage. So we've boosted up the damage that the gore does, and then when you combine that with the charge, which is probably only going to get to do once in a battle anyway, it's going to be a bit more useful to you. So it's now 22 points of damage, 4d8 plus 4, okay? So they're very close, so you could pick either one and it probably would be fine. But you obviously want to use the Gaul with the charge at the very beginning of your turn. Next, legendary actions. Don't give it 3. I've given it 1 legendary action at the end of each player's turn to adjust for the size of the group. Standard actions, dash, which basically means you can move, dodge, grapple, help, search, shove, use an object. All are there as options for you, so you've got a lot of versatility as a Dungeon Master. Basic attack, you used either the Great Axe or the Gore because they're very comparable. They're pretty much very similar in terms of the damage they do. It's just the type of damage they do. And also I've included Frightening Roar, a suggestion from one of the patrons and subscribers. So this works like the dragon's Frightening Presence, and basically it's a little bit different. Each creature within 120 feet of the Minotaur that can hear it roar must succeed on a DC 14 Wisdom saving throw or become frightened for 1 minute. A creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself on a success. If a creature's saving throw is successful or the effect ends for it, the creature is immune to the Minotaur's frightening roar for the next 24 hours. When you get your legendary action, this is the thing you want to use. The first legendary action, this is the thing you want to do. You want to frighten them. You could even use this before the battle even starts to get things moving. Okay? So that should be reasonably simple and easy to run, and it should do what you want it to do. I've always found the Minotaur, as it is set out in the Dungeon Master, the Monster Manual for D&D 5e, it's always been kind of pathetic. It really needed a little bit of adjustment, and that's sort of done it. I'll put this up onto Patreon if you're interested. Okay, all right. So just over an hour, and we got it done. I think that's a pretty good job, if you ask me. Strength to rip the horn off if you have to grapple it. That's something for Dungeon Master to decide, not me. Okay. Kaz and Huma. Kaz and Huma? Who's Kaz and Huma? Hello, Pale Rider. How are you doing? Now, here we go. We've got a question here. Now, let me see if I get this name right. Casio Gaming. Casio Gaming. Can you tweak the Minotaur playable race? Can I just suggest to you that I already have? The playable Minotaur has already been adjusted. I believe that there is a video on it right now that you can go and watch, and you can download it, the first draft, off Patreon. So let me see if I can find it. Let's go here. Because I was thinking about this a while back, and I like playing Minotaurs myself, so we did it. Minotaur playable race. Let me see if I can find the link for you, so you can go and check it out. Yes, Esper has a Minotaur monstrous hero as well. If you're interested in that, you could go and check that out. Let me see. I'm sure I've done it. The race designs. Here we go. Fixing or remastering the Minotaur for Dungeons and Dragons 5e. This is the playable one, the playable option. So I'll give you the link for that. I'll put that into the chat so you know where it is. Okay. And that's the video. And then if you are interested in the what do you call it, the actual document, if you want to download the document, because my patrons are the ones who make it possible for me to keep doing this sort of stuff, and I will be. We'll be remastering all of the classes for Dungeons and Dragons 5e. That will happen. Minotaur. We're part way through. I think I got 4.5 left to go. So, draft notes on Minotaur Race Remastered. Here we go. This is it. So this is the Patreon link if you want to go and check it out. I think my Patreon's pretty cheap. It's pretty good deal if you ask me. So I'll put that in there. There you go. Does that solve your problem? You can see how I did it and do it yourself, or you can just support me and download the thing. Heck, you can download all the remastered races and species. There's a bunch of them. Like, we've done So many. We've done so many. I've made completely new ones as well. Like we've done all sorts of crazy things. So yeah, have a look at that and see what you think. D&D is a war game. Dear. So you can also find a video on the Minotaur Monstrous Hero on my channel too, because I did a live stream on building a character for that. I can put the sample in Discord if it's there. Did anyone suggest cow tipping? No, they didn't. And thankfully, I appreciate. Please not talking about cow tipping. Okay, that's a good thing. A character with farmer background has advantage on a trip check versus the Minotaur. So no, that's not true. So Fred Huber said it's $5 per month. No, it's not. Okay, if you go in there, that will be the standard they suggest, but you do not have to pay $5 a month. That would be nice. What you can do is you can pay $1 a month for Patreon and get every single thing I've ever put up there. And I can assure you there is a lot up there. Okay? There you will have a long time trying to download all that stuff. Okay? Good luck. So no, Patreon is $1. What I would suggest to you though, please do not use the Apple app. You know, the Apple app, do not use, if you are using the Apple app, it'll cause all sorts of problems because they will charge you, Patreon will charge you, I think it's 30% on top of whatever you're paying to Patreon because of the Apple app. Do not use the Apple app. Go directly through a desktop, computer or laptop, or if you're using an Android, go directly to Patreon that way. Do not use the Apple app to purchase from. Okay? Bad idea. Get your money's worth. Just go directly to Patreon. You can put down $1 a month, and I don't mind. That's cool. And just download everything you want. Plus, you get all the stuff that's coming. So, yeah, it's a good deal. It's a pretty good deal, if you ask me. And there's a lot of design work to be done the next couple of months, right through to when they release the not just the Dungeon Master Guide, but also the Monster Manual next year. I'll be redoing a lot of the monsters in this book. We'll be redesigning many of these monsters that you may have discovered aren't quite as good as they need to be. And I'll be curious to see if the new Monster Manual is going to be able to hold up. Okay? I want to warn you though, I have the view that there is value in AD&D and older versions of Dungeons & Dragons like basic D&D, original D&D, Dungeons & Dragons 4e, 3.5, version 3. And so I tend to pull ideas from all those places to build things. Okay? Plus the narrative. Since so many monsters are taken from Greek mythology or other mythology from different cultures, I like to include those concepts as well. Okay, so yeah, yes. So Fred Huber has 3 DVDs full of stuff off Patreon. Yeah, it'll take you a little while. So in archiving, it might be a bit of a problem too because there's so much to archive. Cut and paste. Okay, all right. So I'm going to end this poll. And yeah, that was really interesting. I had a lot of fun. I've been wanting to do the Minotaur for a long time. It bugged me for so long. It's like the Phoenix. The Phoenix just drives me nuts. A good thing I don't have AJ here because he would go bananas as well. The Eye Torrent. Yeah. If you look, I'll give you my Discord as well. Like for those of you who don't realize, my Discord is not a secret. Okay. You're allowed to go and sign up to my Discord and have a chat with me. I do show up there quite a lot more than I used to in the video calls and so forth. So if you want to come and chat, not just type, but actually voice or video, I'm there a lot nowadays because I have a bit more free time, which is nice. But it's not a secret, so you can go and check that out. Okay, here we go. So there's the Discord if you want to join that. Tomorrow I am talking about the wizard for Dungeons and Dragons 2024. I will be reviewing it. I will be making some critical comments on it. I will be telling you what I think honestly is good and what I think is not good enough. Okay? They've had another chance at it. Let's see if they've done their job well. And if they haven't, let's point it out. Okay? So that's what I'm going to do. And yeah, I'm going to get going. So thank you to everybody who's been watching. Thank you to every single person who's been taking part in the poll. I really do appreciate taking part in the poll. YouTube likes it. I like it. It gives me a lot of useful information. Really helps me decide what to do with things. I want to thank all my patrons who support me. I know life is tough right now. I totally get it. I am in a strange position in that I am now only working part-time and not full-time, and I paid off my mortgage. But it's not because of YouTube. I can assure you that now. But yeah. So thank you so much for all of your support. I also would like to say, look, those people in chat who've been presenting their ideas, I can't say enough about Fred Huber. Fred Huber shows up for so many of my live streams and provides some very good feedback. I don't always agree with Fred's Huber's suggestions, but he's all right with that. I'm all right with that. And I want to thank, is it Cassia Gaming? Pale Rider, Negative Space, Derp, and I think that was everybody today. I know Wizards and Warp Drives also. I want to thank you for your feedback and your comments. I do appreciate it. So wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.